Greetings, Sweater Kingdom. It is I, Sweater King, and I am back after a long time, and I was back in time to play the tail end of the 10-year anniversary. Now, I did talk about the anniversary last year, which was the Masquerade event, and the new event, sure, it was fun for the survivors, but the killers had nothing, and the killers make up the game. So, why are we punishing the killer for playing killer, right? Because all the killers had in this event was just a measly, just throwable item, and the survivors had everything. It was almost a 50-50 on whether you are going to win or lose as killer, and it was 90% to 10% whether you're going to win as survivor. And those odds aren't really favorable. Now, the one reason I did like the Masquerade event was because it was balanced for every killer. All the killers had all the overpowered shit that came with the invitations, while the survivors had equally overpowered stuff from the invitations, and it was balanced, and it didn't last that long. And it was a much better event than this last 10-year event. Now, that's just crazy to think about with 10 years behind Dead by Daylight's history. We've had iconic killers as Michael Myers, and the most recent Jason Voorhees now being added to Dead by Daylight. And it seems that this community is very different to when it started. Now, if you were to tell people 10 years down the line that Jason was finally going to be added to people that played Dead by Daylight in 2016, or when the game first came out, people would have been like, oh, hell yeah, another icon. But now people are just complaining for the sake of complaining in this game, and I don't see Dead by Daylight thriving any longer than it already has. It's already amazing that the terrible live service that this game's provided over the past, how long has it been? 6 years now since I've been playing this game? Just seeing how terrible the live service is and how poorly behavior bounces at. Now, granted, Dead by Daylight is a lot more beginner and friendly than it was 10 years ago, but the game is not beginner friendly to begin with at all. If you were to toss someone today into Dead by Daylight in 2016 who's never played Dead by Daylight at all, it was hell for both sides, for both killer and survivor. You had survivors insta-finishing gens, you had killers being able to actually proxy camp with no repercussion, and borrow time was not base kit until 3-4 years ago. So the game has certainly balanced it out and made it more playable for both sides. But a lot of people got to realize that this game never was beginner-friendly until now. But did I enjoy the 10-year event? It was new. It was something interesting. The creepy factor behind it was phenomenal. I'll give it that much. But for a 10-year anniversary, it was very, very weak. They could have done something way better for a 10-year anniversary. But they had the cakes, they had the events, the new survivors, and honestly, it looks pretty cool to see what Dead by Daylight is going to be releasing in the next couple years. There's a Scooby-Doo collaboration, and before you start complaining that Scooby-Doo does not fit into Dead by Daylight, I want you to look at the entire cast of Dead by Daylight, of who we have in there. We have Rick and Michonne, survivors of The Walking Dead. Makes sense. Laura Croft. How does that make sense in a horror game when the game Tomb Raider isn't a horror game? It's a survival exploration game. So adding Scooby-Doo is not really that far-fetched, because if you really think about it, Scooby-Doo really do be dealing with some pretty spooky shit. And they do be surviving a lot of stuff depending on the universe and time period that they pull from. So, if you're really going to sit here and tell me Scooby-Doo does not belong in Dead by Daylight, you are very wrong from a person that's been playing it for 6+ years now. But Dead by Daylight will always still kind of forever hold a place in my heart. Because you have Michael Myers and all the other iconic killers, and Dead by Daylight really do be pumping out some pretty cool and interesting, unique survivors and killers. They've done it a bunch of times. I've been saying this for a long time now, that a movie/TV show of this series would go fundamentally hard with just the original killers. Obviously, licensing issues would be hard to do, but we've seen Dead by Daylight get around licensing issues before with Sadako and Ghostface. because the way they did it was that they got the licensing for the Ghostface mask, but it was an original in-universe Dead by Daylight killer. Sadako was based on the books. So how they got around with that was that visually they could be creative as they want, but they had to follow the same story as the books and not the movies. So it is really interesting to see how Dead by Daylight has been so creative of getting around legal loopholes or trouble. But if they want the game to go any further than it is now, I think they need to balance out the game more. But another part of that is that the community is also one insufferable community, depending on who you ask. The game's killer-sided, or the game's survivor-sided. And this is coming from somebody who plays from both sides. I'd say the game is a little survivor-sided, but good killers make the game. You gotta remember, Dead by Daylight would be nowhere if there was no playable killers. And people that are salty over things that are salty are just people that are like Twitter, annoying as fuck. But yeah, no, it is amazing being back playing Dead by Daylight again, thinking about streaming it again, maybe playing some Jump Scare Myers, because I finally got the hold of Michael Myers. Again, my favorite killer in Dead by Daylight. Any final thoughts I have on Dead by Daylight is going to be basically the same thing I've yapped about. People are just insanely toxic. I can't see Dead by Daylight making anything in the future, but we've seen Dead by Daylight come this freaking far, and we've seen a multiple of spin-off games. We've seen Texas Chainsaw, Friday the 13th, and the new Michael Myers Halloween game coming out, which I will definitely be playing the shit out of that. But that's about gonna wrap it up for today's video. If you like what you see, consider subscribing. Make sure to follow me on Twitch so that you know when I go live next. Join the Discord so you can have a chat with me or any of my other friends that I have in there, and have a good time. So that's it for today. Peace, Kingdom.